Right, we are recording. Hello. I don't even remember what number this is, but this is another meeting interview discussion with Lubomyr Melnyk, the continuous music pioneer. Um, Today we said the next one would be about pattern work and why they exist. And I think there are a lot of misconceptions immediately with that because but when I play some of your pieces, and unfortunately, I can only play your less sophisticated pieces, and people very often mistake them for minimalism, and I struggle to explain why it's not. So, maybe we can start there.
Yeah, it is. The, the patterns were, of course, inspired by the minimalist composers Terry Riley, Steve Reich, uh, and those people have rather disappeared from the world stage now, sadly, because they created very beautiful music back when they first began. But that was the inspiration. I loved the effect of this continuous flow of the sound, and so when I this of course is created by patterns that are repeated, and this was also to some extent affected philosophically through uh, my understanding or perception of Indian music, which tends to be very complex and have very, very complex patterns and counting things that we find really difficult to do, but the Indian musicians seem to manage really well to to uh, to handle these type of patterns. And uh, so I was used that uh, concept as well in the creation, or kept it's in the background. Let's be, it wasn't the foremost thing, but sometimes it would show up, like the philosophical elements. But the the actual origin of continuous technique was the trying to create this constant flow of harmonic sound from the piano, and uh, it was quite an amazing, quite a discovery because suddenly, as I'm playing these, uh, I'm able to perceive minute changes in rhythms and different pressures on different notes. Uh, Generally completely unintended, but they would grow on their own, uh, and uh, and the overtones, hearing a constant tapestry of overtones that would be changing all the time, like the Northern Lights would be just. It was quite amazing, and so I really loved doing it. And after a short while, like after several months or yeah, of playing it, I started to feel a very noticeable energy in my arms, forearms, and hands, and around the wrist area and everything. And this energy became more and more uh, concrete for me. And this was the origin of continuous music because this energy could only happen uh, from the pattern playing. And it did not matter so much on what it was not the pattern itself. It's not like a specific pattern, this one and not another one or something. As long as one were playing this continuous pattern, and uh, uh, then the energy uh, developed, came, and grew. Not so much as my playing, but like from day to day or week to week, it became more and more quite visible to me. And another thing about the patterns is that they have to be incongruent. See, playing four notes in the left hand, four notes in the right hand, or eight and eight, or six and six, would not generate this energy. What would generated the energy was the incongruency that the left hand was four, the right hand was six, or the left hand was six and the right hand was eight, for example, this sort of thing. And I realized that this was because of a specific mental activity. That's not the right word. Activities, I don't understand. I don't really know how to describe it. But when you do incongruent patterns, the mind shifts into a different state. It's not the same as playing 6 6 or 4 4. Completely different state of mental. Uh, Something in the mind clicks over, and you're doing something else with in your head, and that is generating the energy. But it's a holistic thing because it's not. You cannot scientifically separate it as a mental activity only. It's an entire holistic, bodily, spiritual, mental function that altogether, because of these incongruent patterns, would generate a specific energy, a specific, can we call it an electricity? I don't know. It's not quite that, but maybe that I could feel it actually. So this was the start when I realized that, oh, this is something really special. This is something wonderful. And that was when I decided to devote my life to continuous music, to continue to develop this road with the incongruent patterns and that energy. And you, Nathan, have been playing for quite some time. And uh, I should ask, do you feel when you're playing incongruent patterns and your mind is simply floating on the river of this? Because what happens is that you become split into three parts, like the Holy Trinity. You have the left hand, which is one group of notes. You have the right hand, which is another group of a different number. And then your mind is the central thing that operates them both. But the third person is the one, it's not just control, it's something indescribable. But the two, the left hand doing six and the right hand doing eight, that third person is created from that, from the incongruency of the pattern. And that third person is the holistic total energy that is flowing through you and into the piano. And uh, I feel it in my hands. Well, I don't anymore, really. It's because I just play and like I'm automatically doing it. But in the beginning, the initial stages, uh, I could feel it because it was different. Now it's not different anymore, so I don't feel it's like um, if you're used to something all the time, it simply just becomes standard, and you don't notice it anymore. So this was also why I wanted to suggest that you do a lot more of the other pattern work, or the it's like simpler static position work, so that your hands will develop this and you will feel this energy. And
Yeah, it depends on the piece. For a long time, I didn't feel any of that, but when it was when I was first playing the circular etudes, I think I played circular etude number one and number four, and I just had some fairly amazing experiences. I was doing a teacher training thing, so I was in secondary schools and I was on school pianos, and I mean, those pianos are always bad, but they're bad in quite a nice way. They leak the
Yeah,
sounds. The pedal
yeah.
is very uncontrolled. It leaks the sound completely. And I just remember one time I practiced circuitry number one just for 15 minutes, but it was kind of so loud, there's so much sound, and I walked outside and like the sky was purple. The sky was just for about 5 seconds, and I had to like blink and like think I'm going crazy, and then it looked normal again. But it really did something, and
Yeah,
then I could feel it in my hands. I had these experiences of like I put my hand on a table, and when I lifted it up, it just kind of sprang back, like there was a springs in each finger. I mean, what one particular concrete thing is that for years you told me try and play with for closed hands. It's more natural. And for years I didn't really know why you said that, because for me this was more natural and I had to concentrate to do this. But then I think last year it just switched. Now this is fine, and if I do this, I can feel straining in all of these fingers and they just want to spring back.
exactly. Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah. Because
changed.
yeah, yeah. It's very, very good that you notice that, Nathan. Because in fact, like the state of total relaxation is when the hand is like that. Once your hand is developed, because people's um, this thing about again returning to this energy. It was a living, or it is a living energy that actually brings the body back to life. And I could feel as though I needed to play this music so that my fingers would become alive be- uh, for the first time. So even though I could play the Beethoven sonatas and all that sort of stuff, it was my fingers were not alive. But it was through this energy. I could feel that it was slowly changing the material substance of my hands into something. And I think this is also related to the martial arts that uh, in Kung Fu, it's the state of Kung Fu actually alters the body of the Kung Fu master. So that, and definitely with Tai Chi, the body of the Tai Chi master is completely altered physically. The actual substance of the body is changed, and this I felt was so important for the energy to work, and so that the fingers become alive and they become connected to your mind in a completely different way than people normally think when they're playing a piece on the piano. You know, like if you play the Chopin piece, um, you play all the notes, but your fingers are dead uh, because what they are, they're simply basically hammers that you use to bang out on a certain key in a certain order. Whereas in continuous music, they're not hammers; they're actual living substance that kisses the keyboard with its love and its living energy. So uh, the patterns were so important because without them, I would never have experienced this energy in the hands. And I realized it was very new. I felt that I was the first person to have experienced this ever. And I think this is true. I don't think any pianist has ever experienced this before me. And the um, I'm I, I always can remember, uh, even though this was 50 years ago, I remember sitting at the piano and feeling the energy, and uh, it would have been a similar experience to what you described playing on the school piano with the pedal down. There was an enormous amount of sound coming, enormous, and the the overtones and everything are all bouncing around inside, like you're perceiving this stuff, amazing thing. And as you say, this is no longer minimalism. It's not minimalist music. This is something uh, quite extraordinary. But I think to a listener sitting far away from the piano, it can be sort of generally make them think of minimalism. The cure for that would be to have them sitting or lying down underneath the piano so they get the full sound.
Someone did this once. I was on holiday and I was playing in a hotel, and Butterfly, and this man really did just lie down underneath.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So that because then you start to understand, okay, this is not minimalist music. This is something else. This is piano music. And that this piano is starting to live and create this incredible, enormous choir and orchestra of sound. And so, but it all began with this, and without that pattern work and without the origins of this energy and everything, the arpege would never have occurred. The arpege took, okay, almost 20 years of continued playing before the arpege actually did come. Although, of course, even in KMH, there is arpege work, but it's not the same. Uh, uh, the still even that. So there's basically three levels of continuous music, which and they all must begin. You cannot jump from like you cannot skip the first level, which is the patterns, because those are needed to soften the hands, to change the hands and the fingers so that everything becomes alive and that you feel the sound through almost through your fingers. One could say it's not really true. You don't, but there is a connection. There's definitely a connection, which is can only exist with the incongruent playing because the incongruent patterns change the state of mental control or what it is that you become in order to generate incongruent patterns. And that then paves the way to be able to do the arpege, which was the second level. And from there, it went up to the bel canto, the third level, the third stage, which uh, that the bel canto did not come until at least like 20 years after the origin, after I started playing. But it would have been impossible without the pattern music for the body and the mind and the hands to reach that level, sort of like the kung fu level of mental speed and the softness of the hands. Uh, See, this is the major fundamental state for the Tai Chi master is the softness of the body, so that it can react at lightning speeds. The uh, the softness of the flesh reflects in time. So, and time is very important in our uh, existence in a strange way. I mean, well, in many ways, but one of the relationships is the relativity of time. The relationship, for example, an airplane cannot fly if it's traveling at 100 miles an hour. Okay, it has to reach a certain speed before it can fly. Now, how is it that it can fly? Like no human being understands how this is possible. But there is a relationship between the lift of the wings and the speed. And the same with a bomb. exploding. Like, uh, why does a bomb explode? Because this chemical reaction, this enormous reaction, happens in a thousandth of a second. So if you stretch that chemical reaction over 5 seconds, the bomb would never explode. You know, it would slowly crack and the stuff would seep out and stuff like that, but wouldn't explode. So the the brevity of time, is so important in our things, and we don't really regard it very. We don't think about it very much, but it's fundamental to everything. And the Tai Chi master's body can only react, just like the Kung Fu master's body can only react because it becomes soft, incredibly soft, so that in the speed of a thought, the body will change shape. And the normal state of the human body and the hands for the pianist is not like that. So that is why the continuous pianist can do incredibly fast motions because the hands have been softened by the pattern playing or the energy that is generated by the pattern playing. Does that
And
make
I really noticed my own lack of that. I mean, for the most part, like sometimes, um, like more recently, I've introduced some arpeggiated motion into some pieces, so into Parasol and also Evatina. And when I do that, I really do think about the other pieces you can play, such as Beyond Romance or something. And I mean, maybe this is what first really got me interested was I would hear something like Beyond Romance, and I would like not just listen to it, but I try to think about physically achieving it, and it seems very impossible. I mean,
it?
lots of people have this misconception that your music is just it's just playing really quickly or something. And sure, there are people, you can do a glissando very quickly. You can put your hand, you just run, fine. But actually sustaining that, I mean, like I don't know how it feels for you, but it's
It's
so
it's
obviously
extremely easy. It's extremely easy. Once the hand
after
and
20
the
years.
body is it's really whatever I do. Well, not whatever, but almost everything I do is extremely easy. But that's only because it grows in stages. You develop. So it's not it's it's the same, like for uh, a circus acrobat. Like they have to start with very, very basic stuff, but then eventually they can do extremely complex things with their body, twisting and turning up in the air and everything like that. And for them, it's not that hard. I mean, there may be some special things that might be really, but in general, it's quite easy. Whereas for us, even the simple things would be super difficult. But that's the same with playing the continuous music. Um, it's interesting when you mention about these more events and you don't understand the misconceptions. I think the basic misconception is the classical thing that okay, well, this is just like a Chopin etude, so I just play the notes and it's going to be brilliant and wonderful, and it's not. It won't be because there is uh, when you're playing the arpeggiated system, there's a power energy that develops inside the body that is generated and it goes through your arms and your hands into the piano. And it's without that power that is being generated, it's really like it's powerful. It's a powerful energy. And without that, the you can't do the music because it's inside. Um, I think if you compare Me playing this or a classical concert pianist playing it, I think the differences would be really obvious because the concert pianist would lack the power. They don't. Their bodies are unable to generate power. All they can do is hammer out the right. I mean, what they do is phenomenal. I'm not. Uh, what I say might seem like negative, but I'm simply trying to uh, explain the differences. So it's not like one is better than the other. I'm simply stating that for them, the finger activity is totally different from what I'm doing. So when they play uh, Beyond Romance, if they could, I'm not so sure they could, but they will lack the power that is physically there, and this power is based within that energy that we've talked about in this, today now, from this, the source of it coming from the incongruent patterns and what the mind generates in order to be able to do that. Because it's a specific state of mental activity, mental ability. Um, it's it's simply a state that you become, and you become in control of these patterns, and at when you reach that moment when you are in control of these patterns, and there's the three of you, the left, the right, and then the central that is living in both worlds, um, that that energy is the source of the continuous technique. And
No,
so
but maybe, I mean, what should we say to people who like are trying but don't find that yet? I mean, for my part, I want to say minimum minimum 2 years before I could play a real piece, sort of, and minimum 3 years before I could really find this feeling,
mm,
these
yeah.
energy from the patterns. And at times I did struggle with having the patience for that. I would struggle with like, what am I really doing here? Um, and I think it's not so easy. Like the beginning, my experience as a beginner was I would play a meditation and it would be nice, but then I would think about how radically different it sounds from any real piece or anything, and I'd think, you know, like I think at the beginning level, it's the effect. You do have changes in your body and your mind, but they're not so great that you can notice them.
Mm.
Like it takes a while for you to notice them, and then you have to have this patience, and it's a tricky thing.
And you,
Uh,
uh, it's important that the pianist unites himself or herself with the piano and the sound that they're creating, so that there's actually two people there, the piano and you, and that together you are creating this sound and this river of sound. And the piano is a living being that will uh, join with you in this orchestral creation, you know, or this, yeah, it's like a choir and orchestra, and it's and so this is perhaps what something that people aren't used to doing, and it's quite a beautiful experience, and it's quite nice to do. So this union with the piano might be something that should come quite early in the stages, uh, and this perhaps I should have, obviously I should have stressed that when we were working together. Uh, I was trying to fix up things in in the way your hands were moving and fingers were moving, things like that. So I neglected that aspect, but that aspect might have uh, promoted the generation of the energy faster, for you to have discovered. Another thing is that uh, you don't really have enough pieces. You had uh, a small group of pieces where actually um, uh, it would be good to have a huge variety of simple things, but they're all different, and um, and playing them uh, so that one uh, really lives inside them with this sound, like actually living in the river of sound, and that would uh, probably open up open your you up to feeling that, oh, there's this energy in my hands now, in my fingers, and I can feel it in my wrists and things like that. um, but anyway, I think we so far have covered the to some I think a big extent the importance of why there are incongruent patterns. But I think it was very important how you mentioned for people not to view this as minimalist playing, but actually uh, a, a way, a road that will allow you to enter into the piano and into the sound you're creating, which I think minimalism does not go there at all. You know.
There's something about the nature of the repetition here that I'm not sure I can describe it, but like when I'm playing, I'm not thinking, okay, there, because in minimalism, there's the concept of the cell,
Yeah. Mhm.
which you loop, and people might want to compare this with a flux, which you loop. And I recently wrote something about trying to explain the difference, and I put it online. But I think for me, when I play, the nature of the time is maybe strange. Like I could play for 16 minutes and feel like it was three, and it's not so much. Here's the thing. Now I need to repeat it. Now I need to repeat it again, and then again, and then again. Uh, Like I think I don't know. How do you say? There's something about the repetition that makes it not minimalistic.
Right, and it's uh, really I tend to feel very awkward using the word repetition because, as you say, it becomes very mechanical, and this is not mechanical at all. What you are, I prefer to use the term generating a constant flow of notes, so that you generate the pattern over time through time. Uh, but the main difference here, also, I think, with the minimalism is the livingness uh, of the flux and the chordal harmonies. Like one could be completely abstract and just change pattern without any reason whatsoever. And this, of course, happens uh, all the time as I'm playing, but not constantly. But one is not always generating an emotive, cadential flow, but in general, one is because it's living, it's emotional. Like you're in A minor, you go to D minor, you go back to A minor. There's a there's continuous music creates a time weight for each chord, which you it's a living weight of mass that is flowing with you, and it wants to change. Like there's a point where it, it becomes meaningless to continue it longer. It wants to go to the D minor, and it does, and then it sits in the D minor, and the D minor is the mass of time is flowing and moving, and then suddenly, okay, it wants to go back to A minor. Not it, but the whole sense of the flow. You are making this flux living emotionally for you, and so while that w- is not a constant 100% state of playing, because there are times when you just kind of relax and you just might change willy nilly, whatever. But there is that essential time weight that is living and that you carry. You're creating it, and you want to change the color. It's like you're you have a blue light and you want to change it over to the red. So and as the red is bouncing around, and then you want to change it back to the blue, and etc. So you're guiding this living flow, which uh, so which in minimalism, because of course it's played minimalism is always played with a lot of people, so it cannot have that sense of control of living uh, chordal time, because everyone has to change, and you can't have 20 people knowing. So well, theoretically, in theory, you could have a state where they would know to change, but uh, if the continuous pianist makes that change of his own will, and it's but anyway, okay, Nathan, I would like to end today's thing session on that, and it's an interesting world. I hope people have if they've been following the podcast that you're doing, I hope they're realizing that continuous music is an extraordinary universe of things that can be explored and discovered in it, uh, and uh, so that each podcast will talk about something. Uh, so uh, it's also very interesting and good that people have a record of our conversation, so that people can even go back, because I think maybe if someone listens or views the podcast on one day, a year later they come back and listen to these same things that we've said, it might mean something quite different.
That was my experience. Uh, in a way, repetition of the things you said until I could start to feel them for myself, what was very influential.
Mm,
Which is why I think it's your book it was the perfect example of that. Repeating ideas until somehow like I could know they were true in a sense. Was very influential. So yeah, I mean, I think anyone listening still that you should have patience. I mean, like real patience and openness, because you're not going to find any of this stuff if you're actively seeking, or yeah, you have to be patient.
mm. Okay, thank you for today, Nathan. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in a little while later, and we'll go further into continuous music. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Good night. Night.
Night.